Oke, bismillah. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah, amma ba'du. First of all, let's thank unto Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala who has been giving us some mercies and blessings so that we can live today without any troubles or obstacles. Secondly, salawat and salam to our Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam who has guided us from the Jahiliyyah era to the Islamic era. Good day, everyone. So, in this video, I would like to deliver my speech entitled The Journey of Rasulullah Sallallahu to the city of Medina. My name is Maulana Ibrahim, so without further ado, let's start the speech. There are several points that we will discuss today about the hijrah of Rasulullah. But first, we need to know what is the meaning of hijrah. Hijrah means move from one place to another place, and Rasulullah moved from Mecca to Medina in the year of 622 Masih. Speaking of hijrah, there must be some reasons on why Rasulullah migrated to Medina, even though the distance between Mecca and Medina was 320 kilometers away. And remember, back then they didn't have any motor transportation, so they had to walk to Medina through the hot Sahara Desert. So how was it possible? Well, with the power of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, anything is possible. Anyway, so why did Rasulullah and his people move to Medina? Here's some of the reasons. First, because of the large population of Muslims in the city of Medina. Second, the Quraysh people of Mecca was planning on to kill Rasulullah. And the third, the torture by the Quraysh to the Muslims in Mecca. So how does the story of the journey of Rasulullah starts? Well, first, the Prophet was already planning on moving to Medina because in Medina, as I said, most of the population are converting to Islam. So he thought it was a good time to hijrah. But the plan of the Prophet's hijrah was heard by the leaders of Quraysh. So they plan on to kill the Prophet Muhammad before he starts the hijrah. Why? Because they worried that Islam would spread in Medina. So they ordered the young men to surround the house of the Prophet Muhammad. That same night, the Prophet asked his cousin Ali bin Abi Talib to put on the Prophet's blanket and lie down on his bed. With Allah's power, the Quraysh that was surrounding the Prophet's house fell asleep, and the Prophet managed to get out of his house safely even though it was surrounded. The Quraysh didn't see the Prophet coming out of the front door which they had guarded. Not long after the Prophet Muhammad left his house, the Quraysh woke up and entered the Prophet's house full of lust to kill. However, they only found Ali bin Abi Talib who was sleeping. They were disappointed and could not believe everything that had happened. All of this happened only because of the help from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So he started to hijrah on 28th Safar with his friend Abu Bakr Ashiddiq. Then they hid in a cave called Cave Thur because he was chased by the Quraysh who was trying to kill the Prophet. They hid in the cave for 3 days. When the situation was safer, the Prophet continued his journey to the city of Medina. Back in Mecca, the leaders of the Quraysh were frustrated because they couldn't find the Prophet anywhere. So they made an announcement to the city of Mecca and said, "We will give 100 camels to whoever finds the Prophet Muhammad, dead or alive." And the Prophet of Mecca, and the people of Mecca were shocked. Most of them immediately mounted their horses and they competed to find the Prophet just to get the reward. In the middle of nowhere, the Prophet was still traveling through the desert. And out of nowhere, a person from Mecca named Suraka was very excited because he was the first person to find the Prophet. But when he tried to catch up with the Prophet with his horse, suddenly the horse jumped and Suraka fell off the horse. Suraka was confused. He said, "Why is this happening?" Then he rode on the horse again, and for the second time, the horse jumped and Suraqah fell off the horse. This occurrence happened 3 times. This is when Suraqah realized that he should not reveal the location of the Prophet and that he believed in the truth of Islam. So he went back to Mecca. On his way back, Suraqah found a group of people from Mecca who were also trying to find the Prophet. Suraqah didn't want to reveal the location of the Prophet. So to hide the location, he said to the group of people, "Hey, don't go this way. The Prophet did not go this way. There's no use." So because of Suraqah, the Prophet was finally safe from the people of Mecca and he can continue his travel with peace. After days of traveling through the desert, the Prophet made it to the city of Quba, which is only 5 kilometers away from Medina. When he arrived, the people of Quba asked the Prophet to rest in their houses for a few days. The Prophet granted the request, so he lived in the house of a Sahaba from Ansar named Kalthum bin Hadam. For several days in Quba, the Prophet had built a mosque. It was the first mosque ever built in Islamic history. To this day, it is known as the Quba Mosque. So after 4 days in Quba, the Prophet continued his journey to the city of Medina. On Monday, 16 Rabiul Awal, the Prophet finally made it to the city of Medina. The entire population of Medina greeted the Prophet with joy, especially the Muslim population, until there was people who were standing on the roofs of buildings just to see the face of Prophet Muhammad. The Muslim population fought to pull on the ropes of his camel to invite the Prophet to stay in their houses. However, the Prophet asked to let his camel decide where he would rest. The camel, ridden by the Prophet, finally stopped in the yard of Abu Ayyub al-Ansar's house. It was there that the Prophet began to live for several months before he finally built the Mosque Nabawi and several rooms for him to live in. So that was the story of Rasulullah's hijrah to the city of Medina. Maybe that's going to be all from me. I'm sorry if I have a mistake, and I thank you very much for watching. And I bid you farewell. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.